So the NFL is trying to potentially get a new rule in instead of onside kicks, because the onside kick success percentage has gone down so much since the new rules have been instituted about the kickoff returns, where the return team has to be basically 8 of the players have to be within 20 yards of the kickoff line. So there is no real room to successfully recover onside kicks. I mean, obviously Young Ho Koo last year had some success, which was awesome, but it's not something that is normal. And I am not happy about it, because I took a lot of pride in my onside kicking ability. It was something that I worked on a lot, but this is something that I think has been a writing on the wall here for the last couple of years. You see that teams aren't happy that they have basically no chance at the end of a game to come back unless somebody gets very lucky. It feels as if the onside kick thing has become obsolete, and I don't love that. And I think this is potentially my fault, and not just my fault. The man who created Emmett's fault as well, his dad's fault. Tom McMahon deserves to be blamed for this onside kick thing potentially being no longer happening at the end of the game. I like the 4th and 15 concept, by the way. I enjoy it a lot. Whenever that was first pitched out there, because the XFL had something similar to this, and there was as soon as these ideas started floating out there, we said that we think this is awesome. But for a particular team known as the Kansas City Chiefs, if they really wanted to, they could come out and say, hey, okay, we scored a touchdown first drive. Let's go 4th and 15. We're hot. Let's do it again. Let's run it again. And by halftime, they're up 50-zip, and then they're just resting the entire second half if you're that type of offense. And you happen to find a hole in the defense. So they obviously added, okay, Patrick Mahomes responded, saw the same thing that we saw whenever we saw this. They added that you could only do it 2 times a game. Okay, so you obviously have to save one for the end, because you have no idea what's going to happen in the fourth quarter of a game. You might need one, and you might be able to use another one throughout the game, but that takes out what we were talking about. Let's get back to the onside kick thing, though, and the kickoffs basically being changed completely, and not in lieu of the concussion fear. So the kickoff play was a play that obviously had a lot of destruction. I mean, there was high-speed collisions. I'll never forget kicking off my first NFL game and just watching these humans fly by me like a bunch of sawzalls, just going to try to feed their family. And then you got humans on the other side that are just like, it was a classic gladiator warrior thing that did not happen a lot. A lot of coaches, you're talking about a lot of football guys, super football guys that are like, kickoff's my favorite play. Why is that? Well, it's because you just got 10 dudes in a kicker sprinting at 10 dudes in a returner. And there's violence and there's collisions, and there used to be wedges where you would have to have one guy who was like, okay, you're our sacrificial lamb. Basically, you're a wedge buster is your name. It's like, I take a lot of pride in being a wedge buster. It's like, what do? Well, I sprint as fast as I can, and then I dive head first into 3 to 4 people. And that's what you do every time. Every time? Every time. And then I go sit on the bench. I try to get it back. I do some smelling salts. And the next time we score, you know what's happening again? I'm kamikazing into another 4 dudes. And that's just how it was for a long time. That's just how it was for a long time. They had the ball at the 30. There was a lot of returns. In those moments, although incredibly dangerous to people's future health, said wedge busters, for instance, potentially very dangerous. I think a lot of wedge busters will be like, hey, I understand there's an inherent risk in this, but this is the only way I'm making this team, by the way, is being this person. I'm not playing on defense. I'm not playing on offense. I'm a special teamer, and my job is to do this. So once science started coming out, and Dr. Will Smith came out, and he started talking about CT and things like that, the NFL very much understood, like, although the kickoff play is an exciting play and one that creates massive collisions and massive things like that in nature. I mean, it's just next level. And at any given moment, the kickoff return can go to the house. All you need is one person to go out of a lane, and it's a touchdown. I mean, that's just, every single kickoff is a roll of the dice for the team that's kicking off, by the way. That thing can go to the house any moment. And if you give up a kickoff return, I don't know the stats of when you lose, but it's probably going to be pretty high. So that whenever the CTE started coming out and the future health started coming out, and we're about player safety, the first stat that everybody looked at was, okay, for kickoffs, how many people get injured on this play, and how do we go about either eliminating it or making it safer? So whenever I was playing, we did a lot of onside kicks. Tom McMahon, Emmett's dad, and we were very aggressive. I felt like we were very clever in the way we drew them up. We did surprise onside kicks right. We did surprise onside kicks left. We kicked one in the middle. I kicked one to myself. I mean, there was just an entire thing. But after we start successfully hitting surprise onside kicks in the first quarter, in the second quarter, in the third quarter, not just at the end of the game, everybody started using their hands team against us. So opening kickoff of the game, the other team would have their hands team on the field, okay? So they would have 8 guys that would be within 15 yards or 20 yards of the kickoff. And this was in 2015, 2016, 2017. This was years before the CTE conversation and the kickoff rule changed. So we started facing these hands teams every single kickoff. Then whenever they started looking at how do we change the kickoff or do we eliminate the kickoff, I was told that they actually looked at our film from how people were defending us and how many injuries we had, and since the players had to turn and run with the guys as opposed to being set up on their own 10 or on their own 15 with the returner, since they were all up close to the kickoff line of scrimmage, they had to turn and run as if it was a punt return. So there was no more of the posted and then the missile coming at a guy, which was normally where the problems lie. So those stats were shown. Then they decided to make adjustments to the kickoff return, and they made it to the rules that where everybody who defended us, basically, now everybody has to do that. With that happening, obviously, when you have all those people up there, the risk of a surprise onside kick now goes down because you got now 8 people there where opposed you're trying to take advantage of it. You can no longer shift and have 6 people on one side, 4 on another. You have to be balanced. You have to be 5 on 5. So you have the same amount of humans over here because if you put 6 people over here and they only have 4 people covering it, and you have 4 people over here and they have 5 people covering it because they're not smart enough to make the adjustment. It's like, okay, check, bang, we're hitting an onside kick to the right. We used to be able to do that, and we did do that. But now whenever there's 8 people up that close to the line of scrimmage, you can't hit surprise onside kicks. So I would like to say that although the writing has been on the wall that the onside kick is going to disappear, as somebody who took a lot of pride in being a weapon for my team to gain another possession, it's like a turnover basically, getting picks, creating a fumble and covering. I took a lot of pride in that. I think the last couple of years while watching football, with everybody that close to the line of scrimmage and the kickoff line, I felt like with the way the onside kick success rates were just going down. And then you saw kickers stop working on their onside kicks. They were like, you know what? We're probably not going to call it. We're probably not going to get it anyways. They would all just have the same basic onside kick. It was a little bit, there was no creativity, high bounce. There was no spinner. Those things kind of started falling by the wayside because kickers started prioritizing things that mattered and things that didn't. And it felt like onside kicks, even to kickers, didn't matter anymore because the success rate was so low. I felt like it was only a matter of time before they created another option for teams to be able to get back in games, because stealing that possession at the end or being able to come back when down a score is a massive part of football, because not only does it affect gambling, it affects outcomes, but also ratings. Like, you want to know that there's some sort of chance for a team to get back, and in the end, you used to be able to deal with onside kicks, used to be able to steal some possessions throughout the whole thing. Yeah, that was me right there. That high point with the circle, that was basically us that year of 2014. It was so much fun. I got a little bit reckless too. I was starting to say things in team meetings that I shouldn't say. We would come out of a game and we had an onside kick call. We had like 2 onside kicks, maybe a surprise onside kick, and we didn't call it. Right? For some reason, we didn't call it. And on the sideline, I was probably pitching to call it on numerous occasions, and we didn't call it. We ended up losing the game, right? So now Tom McMahon, Emmett's dad, knows that in that meeting the next morning, the special teams meeting the next morning, that we're talking about the game. He knows that I, during the game, was wanting to call something. We did not win, and an extra possession would have been awesome. And I started. I mean, I was getting a bit reckless with the things I was saying. Yeah, but none of this matters because we could have called an onside kick, so this doesn't even matter. And Tom would be like, well, that's a decision that a lot of people have to make, Pat. And obviously there was a couple of chances where we didn't have the look, and sometimes we did or whatever. He would go to the next one, I'm like, could have done it right here. We could have called it right here. We would have got it. And I just wanted the rest of the team to know, like, hey, listen, I was pitching hard for us to do this, because for a special teams unit, whenever you're running fakes, whenever you're doing onside kicks, like the boost that is for the team, it's like, hey, we're not just in between plays here. We're actually making plays. And Tom and I actually had to have a talk. And he was like, hey, listen, you think I'm the one that has to, you think I am the one that has to give the green light for an onside kick? Go yell at Chuck. Like, listen, if you want to yell in the middle of a meeting, don't make it the special teams meeting. Make it the team meeting then. So that next week in the team meeting, Chuck would say something, And I just thought about, like, in the middle of it, should I just treat this thing like a special teams meeting and just tell Chuck I think this is a bunch of BS because he won't call the onside kick? And I sat back and I said, no, not my spot. So I never had that moment. But Tom McMahon caught some wrath a couple of days. And I feel so bad for the man. But it is 100% our fault that this happened. I really do believe that this is our fault because the stats of teams, whenever they were playing their hands team against us, the injury rate that we had was so low. Everybody was like, this is probably what we should do here.
And you said it perfectly as far as like the end of the game's concerned. If there was a game in the last couple of years and it was under 2 minutes and they were down more than one score, like you knew they could get that one score, but the percentage of getting an onside kick again and then scoring again was so low. But now with the 4th and 15, they said there's a 25% chance over the years that a 4th and 15 is converted. Like, that's going to make 2-score games at the end much more exciting, and even 3-score games if you could run 2 of them.
So onside kicks, you can't advance, right? You can only cover them. So, like, I don't know if a lot of people know that, by the way. Like, onside kicks, you can't advance. Muffed punch, you can't advance. Fumbles, though, on kickoff return and punt return, you can advance. So the only thing you want to do is cover. This 4th and 15, I'd assume they can score on that play.
I would assume so as well. Oh, yeah.
I would assume that we could potentially see last play of the game, 4th and 15, like, hey, this is for it right here. Maybe it's a tie. Maybe it's a tie game at the time. And now you go 4th and 15, you have one in your back pocket. Like, hey, instead of going to overtime, let's try a little annexation of Puerto Rico here to see if we can pull this thing off. Like, I think this is going to definitely make the game more exciting. But as a kicker and a guy that really took a lot of pride in onside kicks, I feel like there's a chance these things are going to become obsolete. And I don't love that.